Welcome back. You're watching CrossRoads with Neethan and Shan. We're talking about young entrepreneurs and their challenges and opportunities in this country. We talked a lot about your journeys in business. You also talked about what kind of help, if any, that you got in reaching a particular success in your careers and in your businesses. Obviously there's more success to come for all of you, but at least until now, what kind of support you'd received to succeed, or what kind of external factors helped you. Let's talk a bit about challenges, not just for your businesses, but in general. Unemployment is pretty high among young people. And even if it's employment, many of them after finishing graduation, they're getting employed at an underemployed level with pay being low, or taking temporary jobs or contract jobs and not stable jobs and so on, right? So many of them are turning towards business as an option. Either it's part-time while they're working somewhere or taking it as a full-time, right? So what kind of challenges are young people facing when they start a business? Because not everybody is succeeding. Not everybody is succeeding at the level we would like to have them succeed, right? So what are some things that are challenging?
One of the challenges, you mentioned a good point where not a lot of people are succeeding and a lot of people go into failure. It's one of the reasons is they don't take a calculated risk. They take risk arbitrarily. They jump in, okay, let's do a business, overnight get up. Instead, they look at the policies. There are a lot of red tapes around government policies if you wanted to start up something. Just to touch on me, for example, there is a policy that when you have a small business, when you run it at home or anything, there is a municipal policies that you need to follow, which at the beginning I wasn't aware of, and I did personally face those challenges. Those are the challenges that young people need to be aware of. It's very seldom they go and look at those. I mean, I didn't, for example, and I know there are a lot of people who doesn't as well. And on top of it, it's the risk factor that they take. Some people are willing to take risk. Some people don't want to take risk, but they wanted to run a business. But as you and everybody else knows here, without taking risk or calculated risk, there's not a success in the business.
So, as you mentioned, we have to take a bit of a risk. Risk means, your time, your energy, your change in careers and other things, but also money as well, right? So calculated risk. Other than that, red tapes of government policies and so on. What are the challenges? Or even challenges?
End of the month, rent, other expenses. We have to buy material, and then the only thing we do is this. Yeah. We don't work outside. Yeah. First thing in the morning to night. Yeah. We come in, we do this, and then end of the month expenses and all that.
The sacrifices you have to
sacrifices, and these were the main issues that I faced when I started, and financially it was pretty hard.
Yeah, especially if you have a field where you need a physical space. I mean, slightly different. I mean, you might still need a physical space, mobile, and a capital cost.
I needed a space. I needed my clients to come in
and all this stuff, right? So that initial investment. So, talking about barriers, and is there support for loans and stuff like that? Is there enough support, or is it easier to get those support?
Not really. When you're a new business, even when you apply for a $500 credit from a supplier, it's pretty hard, especially when you're new. But when you're 2 or 3 years older, they would come up to you and then, hey, let's give $5,000 or something. It's really hard to get a credit, even a small credit from a supplier, and even from a bank.
So that's a big challenge, because you're telling young people to start exploring business sector or entrepreneurial spirit. There are some programs that help, but not enough. In many places, it's either a $2,000 or $1,000 credit type, which is not going to be helpful for all sectors, right? How about other challenges? Particularly also, again, I come to you from a gendered aspect, because our as Tamil community, you go to our business councils and different places, is men dominated in many ways, right? Yeah. So young women entering a business, even within family or in a community, aren't as supported, regardless of communities, but including our communities.
Yes, it is difficult. It was difficult. It is continues to be difficult. First of all, there's that work-life balance as well. As a woman, you're expected to do household chores, run the family. And then when you step outside of that and you don't have regular hours, inside 9 to 5, and now you're working because it's your own business. Now you're working at all, times of the day because you have to
Yeah, you can't say I'm off the clock now. Right?
You can't. It's 24/7. Exactly. So that's the balance. It's a challenge balancing life and work. The other thing is safety issue as well.
Definitely.
Me being more mobile and going into clients' homes. Those are things I have to consider. So those are
no, definitely. I mean, those are things that may be oblivious to other people in terms of not realizing, the safety concerns that young women professionals have to, whether it's real estate, interior decorations,
exactly.
even going into places to do certain types of works, right? So.
And thirdly, also the value of service. Like not a lot of people realize the benefits of, let's say, home staging. So they don't realize when they don't. I might go to a consult and they might just feel, oh, it's okay. I'm gonna put the house on the market without doing any staging, and it will sell.
Yeah.
And then when it doesn't, they come back for another consult, and then we end up staging it. So there's also that undervalue of service.
Yeah. Especially when there is no materials that are directly involved. If it's a human service, whether it's social services or professional advice on matters and things like that, even web design and stuff like that, our businesses aren't investing as much into that, right? That's one of the reasons.
And other challenge, I would say, it's the commitment and the rapport that you build with in my field, or not only in my field. I mean, customer relationship is much more important than what's your product or price or where the place that you're going to be selling it from, because at the end of the day, if you don't have the people and if you don't have the trust, if you don't build the trust, that is one of the challenge.
It takes time.
It takes time, and it continues to be a challenge because, speaking for my industry, it's result is important. If there's no result, customer can walk away. Same thing to other industries as well. If you don't satisfy or if you don't provide the necessary information or any customer satisfaction, or build the trust, and once you lose the trust, it's lost. It's gone. So that comes back to marketing, because now that marketing was word of mouth. Now also going to be negative, in a negative way. It's going to be word of mouth. That's a challenge.
Yeah. So you talked about a whole different types of challenges, and now one of the things I want to pick up on is the information lack of. You talked about calculator risk. For somebody to take a calculator risk, they need to know a lot more information about the field that they're entering, a lot more information about government policies and the restrictions and all this stuff, right? Where do we get that? Do young people have enough opportunities today to learn those things or find out those things or supported by those things?
There is information. There are information sessions done by individual groups or or other. Even in our community, there are other groups does it. When I said calculated risk, I mean yes, it is related to government policies and everything. But what I really mean is write down your objectives. Like, I mean, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do in like 2 months down the road, or 2 weeks down the road, or even tomorrow? Okay, this is my target is. It could be your sales. Okay, I wanted to achieve in my sales, $10, for example, tomorrow. How am I going to do that? What is it going to take me to get there to make that $10? Let's say if you have a family and you are taking a risk, at the end of the day, like you have a mortgage, let's say, for example, how am I going to bring the mortgage So those are the calculated risk. Okay, taking small steps, baby steps at a time. You cannot ask a baby to, a born baby to get up and run and walk with me. It's a small step that baby takes, and even in your business journey that you need to be able to take, like, I mean, you need patience. I've seen a lot of youngsters that come into the industry, whether it's my industry or different industry, they come in and they just, I wanted to fly like a bombardier, but it doesn't work in the business. It doesn't work in the business.
Well, you took a bit of a risk changing careers, right? That is as big as it can get, because you worked in a field for 8 years, and to kind of take that risk, there must have been a lot of calculation that went in, right? One of them was, obviously, you talked a bit about, the flexibility in terms of the child that you had, right? Were there other things that anybody else you had to talk to, or any other things that helped you make that decision?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it starts with family as well. You have to have, your husband, your family behind what you decide to do. And it is hard because both of us are not from that business, side, so we don't know what to expect once I do this. What are the risks involved? We didn't know. I didn't know when I jumped in. Maybe that's what helped me jump in.
Yeah.
Is because I didn't know how
knowing
hard
too
it was.
much, knowing
Exactly.
too much would deter you, right?
Ignorance is a bliss.
It's like Googling. You have a headache, you Google up something like this side is hurting, and then you see all sorts of things,
and the other side starts hurting too. So
yeah,
definitely. But I mean, when I started, it was my family members, my husband, who started my website for me. He's never done website, but he researched on how to build it. And then my sisters, who were always there. Even my parents, even though I've now jumped into a career that's not really fully supported by the old mentality, I had the freedom at that point. I had a family, and I guess I wasn't really living in that secluded cell of theirs anymore. So they let me explore this further. So.
Well, that's a good point, the freedom. And I mean, you got freedom because you had left a particular frame of family, right? In many ways, our younger generation, are they experiencing a little bit more freedom to experiment this, or is it still restricted? And you took a particular risk too. I mean, your risk is also in terms of capital, because you had to kind of invest into machines before knowing how it would go, right?
Yes. Okay. I started with a $300 machine, and then I moved up step by step. I didn't start with a $100,000 machine. Now I have $100,000 machine. Most people, what they look at is successful business people, and then they want to become like them right away next day. But it doesn't happen right away. You need to have patience, and most people don't have patience, and they quit in the middle. So you have to have some sort of plan for 1 day, 1 week, and then next month, next year. You have to set the goals, and then you have to work accordingly. So I think that's one of the major issues that young people are facing now.
Sometimes we have families that support them to a large extent with everything, and so failure becomes something that they won't be able to. So
that's a good point. He brought it up where he started with a $300 investment, because some of the startup companies that you go and you see them, it'll be very much beautified outside, but they will have no clients. Or there's no customer, but everything they spend their investment or everything in beautifying their places or making an advertisement, rather focusing on customer build relationship. That's an operational expense for them, and it's at the end of the day, it is going to come and bite them. They may not realize it at the start of the company, but down the road, they may have come up with some capital as a business investment, but those investment has gone into an operational investment. So those are one of the calculated risks that I was mentioning earlier.
But we see governments bailing out big corporations with billions of dollars, right? I mean, I understand that you had to start small because you had to have enough money to invest little by little, make the money, and then reinvest and stuff like that, right? But it's also asking our young people to put in way more time into something to become successful than they really need to have. Because if big corporations can get bailouts, why not a bit more money to support that initial risk? At the end of the day, you end up paying taxes in those two, right? And as a loan. Or as even incentive to, how we have loan forgiveness and things like that, an incentive to start. So do you see that as a beneficial thing that can speed up, from $300 to $100,000 machine? If it took you 5-6 years, with a bit more support, it might have gotten you in 3 years.
Definitely.
Because your hard work was the same when you were there, and now your character was the same, right? It's the stuff that was needed was that initial extra support that many of our families cannot afford, because we came through turbulent times to old, right? Is that seen as a handout? Is not such something? Because it's happening at the bigger corporation level. Why not in small businesses?
I'm going to take a different approach to this question. I agree with you, but at the same time, I'm going to disagree with that the support as well. One of the reasons the biggest corporations that do get support from bailout being is there's a huge employability. You're looking at 5,000, 6,000, 8,000 to 5,000 and up employees are part of this organization. Now, the commitment when you come to small business, no government or no individual will know what's your commitment or what's your persistence going to be. Are you tolerant enough to failure? Are you going to be learning? Because you learn a lot of, I'm a firm believer that you have to fail in order for you to learn. But if you don't fail, you're not going to see the success.
I might disagree with you again with that because we know that most people are employed through small businesses. If you take the number of people employed, they are employed through, even though the large businesses have large number of employees, but if you take the percentage of people employed, many of them are employed through small business. Small businesses employ the most amount of people than big businesses, because big businesses are smaller in number, but they have larger, right? So I mean, if you want to invest into, and small businesses invest back into the own country rather than ship out profit as well, right? So
I don't disagree with that point. I do agree in that point, but I'm talking about startup.
Yeah,
if somebody is going to be coming and starting up something, there's no firm belief that product or that service something's going to be lucrative for, or is it going to be beneficial to the country or the economy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Nobody would know. So either government or even the financial institution, that's the reason that they are very hesitant in the beginning to give out any loans or anything, because there's not enough statistical because we are about statistics here in this country. You provide facts.
So.
it's a lot of things based on facts.
Okay. So yeah, we'll take a break and come back. I think it's there might be a way to mitigate that, because there is not all young businesses are just sending their dreams. They're sending business plans. They're matching their funds and other things too, right? So we can probably figure out a way in which we can advocate. So let's take a break, because we want to come back for the last segment and talk a bit about specific programs and initiatives that our community can take, policies that government can take to help this situation. Because as I said, youth unemployment is high. There has to be multiple ways to address that. One is creating jobs, but the other one is letting young people become successful in businesses as well, right? So let's take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll discuss that. Stay tuned.